Good morning, fuckers, and welcome to another day at the Daily BM. I have Mike in the house. What's going on?
Good morning.
And Anitra, welcome back.
Yo, you crack me up every morning with your good morning, fuckers. I giggle every time you do that.
Yeah, it has its morning hook. That's for sure. It's kind of like a cup of coffee. You can't deal without it, you know?
I like it.
He tried one episode not to do it, and I was like, no, we got to restart. You can't. There's no other way to start the show. Like that's the way you come in.
I literally was like, "Good morning, guys. How are you guys today?" I sounded like a freaking infomercial. You know what I mean?
I was like, what the fuck?
He looked at me and he's like, "No, we got to start again."
No, we're not doing that.
We're not doing that. But what we are going to do in this episode is talk about conspiracy theories and things like that, man.
Uh-huh.
So, Anitra
Theory
brought
or
up,
fact?
It can be either or.
Yeah.
It can be opinion based. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Mikey's going to fact check us anyway if we try to say it's fact. Because trust me, that's what he does. But
no, don't.
Oh, really? Captain Google?
Yes.
But anyway, that being said, you brought up something interesting about like Super Tuesday on the last episode. You know, about so what would be the conspiracy behind like these technical outages and things of that nature that happen, like with Meta, and in your opinion, what do you think what was causing?
Well, I didn't really have an opinion. I don't trust anybody that's as far as all that goes, right? So I'm like,
Right.
I'm open to the possibilities that these fuckers can be up to anything at any given time. But, I mean, realistically, there's been lots of fear-mongering around cyber attacks from outside of the U.S., right? So, I mean, that's kind of where my mind goes right away, but you hear all kinds of stuff like Biden is owned by China, and it's like, probably, I don't know. The earth is flat. I don't give a shit. I still go to the gym to squat. If it's round or flat, I don't care.
My thing is, it's like, you could talk about like an outside, I'll pick on China here for a minute, but the reality is to me, I don't know if it's just their reporting, because some of the stuff, we have a propaganda machine too here in our own country, but I also the pickup of a lot of these weather balloons that China's sending our way. You know what I mean? But my biggest problem I have with like that is, why did we allow it to go from the West Coast almost all the way over to the East Coast before we blew it down? They tried to use it as, oh, well, there's houses and homes and stuff. We didn't want to shoot it down because it could hit a home or whatever. But it was over Montana. They knew it was there. And Montana, let's be honest, is very rural. So it's like, why wouldn't you just shoot the bitch down? Like when it was right then and there. I mean, then pick the stuff up and investigate it later. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's obviously not on it's on a flight pattern. It doesn't have any identification. Shoot the bitch down. I'm still trying to figure out why we allowed it to cross country. I mean, you guys have any thoughts on that?
Because the landlord has to check on their property.
Yeah. Again, we are so isolated, right? Like being married, I was married to someone from Europe, right? So I spent a lot of time in Europe, and I have lots of friends abroad, all over the world, and we're so insulated with our beliefs and what we're taught, or what we're exposed to, our cultures. And I can understand, having traveled abroad as much as I have, why we are disliked kind of as a stereotype worldwide, having had that experience. But you don't, unless you go out, you don't know, right? So all we know is what they tell us.
When you talk about like worldwide in America as a whole, how we're viewed, I can honestly tell you that this was 12 years ago when I went to England. And I always bring this up because there was a guy there that absolutely couldn't stand Americans. Now, which is kind of funny because English by nature are usually somewhat a little pretentious too. You know what I mean? So I kind of found it humorous that he was just so anti-American. And so I just asked him, you know what I mean? He was just like, well, because you guys feel like you're entitled to everything. I was like, yeah, check. You know what I mean? We definitely feel we're entitled at times. And then, he just, every time he's run into an American, they've always been like that, like entitled, very over the top, like, oh, what? I'm an American. I need to have that. That's mine. You know what I mean? That kind of attitude. But after I left there, he actually changed his attitude about us because, I'm a cool motherfucker. So,
Well, yeah, but listen,
like the way I threw that in there.
Think about it this way. Like, what a meddlesome, entitled entity. So think about all of the military bases all over the world. The U.S.
Right.
military bases. Now, if another country wanted to have a military base in the U.S., how do you think that'd go over?
Well, but we also, the reason why we had those military bases, and again, was because it was part of a signing or an agreement between those countries,
NATO.
or it was a signing with NATO, and or it was a country that we went in and liberated or whatever. So we were able to put a base there. So in that sense, if I always say history is written by the victor. You know what I mean? So it's not written by, obviously, Germany can't write the history they lost.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, you got any thoughts on that, Mike?
No, I think you nailed it.
Yeah. So I mean,
well, I mean that it's just it's through either like through NATO. We have military bases to help defend other countries. And then also like, in South Korea, we have a military base there to protect South Korea. Germany, we established a military base after World War II to prevent them from doing what they did again. Japan, same thing. We established a base there, which I don't even know if we still have that base in Japan.
In Okinawa? Yes, we do.
Oh, Okinawa? Yeah.
End
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it's in Okinawa. That's right. I was trying to think of where it was at. So we established that base because, as part of the signing of the end of the war, they agreed not to have any type of military force anymore.
Which I believe, to interject on that, Mike, what you just made a point. Yeah. I believe that's already been lifted, and that's why China
it has.
That's why Japan, and they didn't get rid of the American base in Okinawa because actually most of the younger population in Okinawa really loved the American bases being there. So,
when we're also part of their protection, that's part of our
correct
strategic defense. And then, Afghanistan, we had bases there, but we weren't the first ones there because Russia was at war with Afghanistan long before we got in a conflict with them.
Yeah, that was
same thing with the French being in conflict
battle
before Vietnam.
Wasn't that 20 years or 20 plus years they were in a battle with them? And finally they said, fuck it, we can't win this. They even said it's a non-winnable war just because of the fact of the region itself, the mountains and all these things. Geologically, it was just a nightmare. It's kind of like the Vietnam War. It was a geological nightmare fighting in the jungle. You're fighting somebody's home turf.
The problem with Vietnam was the military strategy, because we would go in and capture an area and then we would abandon the area right away. Because there's I can't remember who the general that was in charge, but his thought process is win through attrition, basically just keep killing off their men, but not capturing land. So we didn't capture any land in Vietnam. Like, we'd go in, we'd wipe an entire area out, remove all the Viet Cong, and then leave the area, and they would just come right back in. And it was going back and forth. Like, we wouldn't push the line forward.
But it was also their ability of digging all those underground tunnels and making it super hard for Americans to actually get them out because they were so dug in.
No, not really.
A
lot of you go back and look at the history. The entire problem was we kept pulling back out of the areas after we secured them. Like, we would go through, secure the area, and then we would abandon it and pull back.
Well, a lot of stuff I read,
the enemy back in, and we already have all that area mapped, and we can go in and wipe them out. So he was hoping to just eradicate them, but
it's hard to eradicate somebody out of their home turf, even if they know the
and they
area.
Were getting a lot of support from the other countries around them as well.
Right, people coming over the border and helping out, giving them supplies, guns, ammunition, everything.
Yeah. So and then American just got tired of the war. Like, it became no longer politically sustainable.
Yeah, it was not a popular war at home.
And that's what turned the tide, all the videos coming back of the soldiers dying and the way that they're going, and then the atrocities the soldiers were committing, that didn't help the cause either, because that got out, and it was like, oh wow, what are we doing to these people over here?
Yep. Well, to get back to the conspiracy theory, you said something about, like, we were talking about the technology and things like that. The interruptions. My conspiracy theory is that, obviously the sun is expanding, and I believe it's more active. probably than we've been in a while, and maybe they're not telling us something. You know what I mean? Because a lot more solar flares, a lot more things are creating communications interruptions. The temperatures are rising on the planet. I just watched. Speaking of which, the other night where it was on the news and they were talking about this plane that was flying into the Northeast, like literally was having so much turbulence it injured like 50 people on board. Severe turbulence. And I've noticed, like, in the news as of late, you're starting to see a lot more of that with these planes struggling to not hit turbulence. Because, I mean, and again, maybe it's just the reporting of it, but it kind of like made me open my, made me think about, maybe this is like what you were, Mike and I have talked about this before, where we were talking about Elon Musk. Maybe they're onto something. The reason why they want to get to another planet and do something, because they know this planet might be in trouble of dying. We were talking about the rotation of the Earth, even, on it, and that it's got a wobble going on. And a scientist just released, and I guess Mike will have to fact check it to make sure, but I mean, because it's based on, like, again, it could be propaganda, but they say the scientist said that he found the reason why the wobble of the Earth is starting to wobble, and it's kind of like a spinning top. Once that starts to happen, it starts going out of control, and it can be catastrophic to the planet. But they determined it that because of China's industrial boom, along with India's population growth, they're removing tons of well water out of the ground. Which is weight. And you think about it, the Earth is perfectly
weight balance. Yeah,
it's weight balance, and China is building so much, the concrete weighs a lot, so it's starting to throw everything off.
Well, I don't know that who's that Neil Tyson deGrasse. I'm not a fan of his, but he was saying that the Earth isn't perfectly round. It never has been. So who knows? How do we know? I don't.
It's like an oval, like an egg.
but think about it though. I don't know. You hike, right? You talk about you go out to the Carter Road trails where I go, and like, how weird is how windy it's been lately here. That's uncharacteristic for this area to have the kind of winds that we've been having. And me being in aviation, I've got friends in general aircraft all over the country, and my buddy up in Ocala I'm good friends with, he flies down pretty periodically, and we'll grab a bite over at the Waco kitchen, and he's like, I haven't been able to fly for 3 days because the wind gusts are too high to carry my little airplane away.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume. I mean, they showed like an airliner landing in a few locations across the country. They were basically coming in sideways because the crosswinds were so horrible. I mean, which they do anyway. They do anyway. But, and some of them, they had to say, hey, we're going to have to close the airports. And I think they had a major shutdown the day before yesterday in the Northeast because the winds were so high. There was thousands of cancellations because they couldn't bring planes in because the winds were so high. So
that's weird.
So I really obviously, the planet changes constantly. I mean, this planet's been around for billions of years. Well, and it's been through tons of ecological changes, but maybe we're having one now. Maybe we're speeding up the process.
Listen, they've already come out with it. It's public knowledge now. They've been doing weather seeding and geoengineering now for years, and now they're talking about it publicly. So, I mean, there's this podcast called geoengineering.org, and it's a guy named Dane Wigington, and how he got started is he was into green energy, and he built like this gorgeous, like big, like he won this huge award for this green home. Like, probably, I guess, if I had to guess, it'd be like mansion type-esque,
right?
But green energy, and he was losing tons and tons of the solar power. Like, it was decreasing incredibly, and he couldn't figure out why. And then, of course, we talk about the chemtrails, right? That he started testing his soil, trying to figure out why are his solar panels not getting the power or holding it or whatever, getting charged, for lack of a better term. And they were finding like the metal particulates in his soil. They were testing it regularly, and it was becoming increasingly higher in short amount of time, and correlation with what they're seeing with the air traffic overhead. So
Mhm.
then that's how he got started into geoengineering.org. And what he does is he reports weather anomalies all over that mostly seem to only be explained by chemical reaction. These aren't things that would happen in nature normally or scientifically without introducing a stimulus.
Interesting.
So,
Wow.
Good stuff.
So, you know, who knows? I mean, I'm like one of these. I'd like to stay open to the possibilities of everything, right? Because there's always a double-edged sword with everything, right? Like, if you believe it or dream it, anything's possible, right? Well, there's a flip side of that coin too, right? You know, there's always the yin and the yang. So who knows how bad the crazies are and what they're doing? I don't know.
You know, it's crazy because, like, you know, I was watching one of my favorite shows to kind of like nerd out on is Ancient Aliens. You know what I mean? A lot, because they do a lot of conspiracy theory stuff too, you know, and a lot of what if scenarios. And one of the what if scenarios they were talking about is what if humans lived on Mars, you know, before, because we do know that Mars has water, you know, or had water, doesn't have it now, but had it. There was microbes in the rocks that they brought back, that were obviously there when you had to have life there of some sort, that we seeded Earth with us as a species, you know.
I've heard that too.
But you know, the reality is that, you know, humans from way back when, there's a lot of things we don't know that were documented that they haven't released and or we don't know about. You know, because, you know, to think that the countries and governments and things like that wouldn't hold stuff back from us because we're not, quote unquote, ready for it mentally. I mean, what's your guys' thoughts on that kind of stuff?
Well, I mean, that's 100% true.
Yeah. Well, as an events coordinator that deals with large amounts of people, I can tell you that one-on-one, people are great. People as a whole
suck.
They
Mike, she says as a whole, suck.
Yeah, that's better than what I was going to say. I was like,
I'm just laughing at him, man. He has been kind of quiet for the last 5 minutes and the only word out of his mouth, suck.
No, it's true, man. When you get that group think, people go nuts. Mob mentality.
Yep.
Oh, yeah?
For sure. In anything. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So.
I mean, I honestly believe that humans aren't indigenous to Earth. I mean, we're one of the creatures that don't really, on this planet, that don't do well with the sun. You know what I mean? Like, you know, reptiles, they use the sun to heat their bodies during the day. You know what I mean? Because they do. Look at it. The reptiles.
No, I'm talking about, what do you mean humans don't do well with sun?
Well, I mean, we'll get sunburned super fucking easy. You know what I mean? And the sun is very detrimental to us.
That's only recently because we spend all day indoors.
Yeah, so check this out.
It's a region too, because like us white people come from more of the north, which there's less sunlight. So we're not adapted to the climate that we moved into.
Like somebody from Africa, for instance, that has like more, because they've adapted over time, maybe because of the fact that they had 7 layers of cuticle in their hair as well. Mm-hmm. Black hair actually has more cuticles than white hair.
So yeah, so it has more about the migration that we're living in areas that we weren't born into and we weren't adapted to, as opposed to that we're not as a whole.
So they say
not adapted.
That you should not wear sunglasses outside because when your eyes, when you're out at the beach or whatever, your retina are signaled that, we're out in the sun for extended period of time, and it does something to the melanin of your skin that's supposed to protect you from getting sunburned. So actually UV protection for the eyes is actually does the opposite. If you didn't wear the sunglasses, you wouldn't need the sunscreen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It also messes up your sleep schedule. Like, they recommend that you go out and get full sunlight in your eyes because it helps you wake up and helps you become more alert. And then if you watch the sun set, you get better sleep because it puts you, it messes with, or corrects your circadian rhythm. Yeah. And that's why blue lights become such a problem, because it mimics the sunlight. Before we had all this technology, you know, our eyes would pick up the blue light and they'd be like, okay, it's time to be awake and alert. And then it'd go down and be like, okay, it's time to rest and sleep.
Let me tell you something about the blue, talking about the conspiracy. So I worked for a Fortune 500 company based in Virginia. I don't want to say what it is because, quite frankly, anyway. But because of what they did, they were involved in cancer research, but they also owned cigarette companies. Because of I was in the fitness center there. I was a trainer in the fitness center for all of the administrators for this large Fortune 500 company. And because of this and my logins, I had access to medical journals that someone with my certificates would not have access to normally. And I've always been into the diet and the coaching. So I was on the side, I was doing these big nutrition challenges at some of the other gyms in Virginia. So I was doing some research and I came across this study, and this was a long time ago. The study was, and what they were doing with the study on rats, I still have the printout somewhere inside because I printed it out. I'm like, I can't believe what I'm seeing right here, is they found that they could suppress or trigger your appetite through red and blue LED blinking patterns in rats. So they learned how to manipulate your endocrine system through LED lights blinking in patterns, and then all of a sudden LED TVs are all the rage. I mean, I haven't had a TV in over 20 years, and I think that's why my brain isn't like completely mush, because I don't watch TV. And I was like, holy shit. And that was back in, I found that article, I think it was in 2010. And I don't know how old the study was at that time, but I can tell you between 2010 and now, I mean, look around. Who knows what kind of manipulation's being done now through the TVs.
Yeah, definitely.
Through devices, period.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a lot. I mean, you can see just by the way that social media is being manipulated. I mean, it's
the dopamine
it's crazy.
hits.
And I think that's a whole other topic we can go into, just the manipulation of electronics and how it affects.
Yeah, let's save that for another day. We're about out of time for today because we'll go on for another 30 minutes talking about that. Right. So we'll have you back on, Anitra, and we'll talk about that one. I'm sure we can all talk about that for a while because I have my own feelings about it.
Oh, yes.
Anyway, well, listen, guys, don't forget, head over to thedailybm.com where you can find all our socials. You can also like and subscribe. Don't forget to head over to YouTube as well. We now have our YouTube channel up and running. So with that, Mikey, you got anything before we get out of here?
No. Everybody have a great day and just get out there and kill it.
All right. Nitra, thanks again for coming on. And don't forget, go follow her. She's on Instagram. You want to give out your handle or no? It's up to you.
Yeah, sure. It's just Anitra Goddard.
All right, cool. And then also go to Stole Nation. It's STOL Nation. They're also on Instagram as well. And pay attention to that, the Sonic Fun that's going on if you're local in the area. You want to head over to it. So with that, we're out of here. And we'll catch you guys on the flip side.
Peace. Have a good one.
Deuces.